Welcome to the Not Normal Farmhouse dining set build, where I'm going to show you guys how to build chairs, table, and a bench, all from reclaimed barnwood and reclaimed wood. And we're going to do it in a record-breaking 35 minutes and 53 seconds. I hope that you guys can benefit from this, learn, and are encouraged to maybe build your own set. Enjoy. I'll have to give you a quick explanation on this because I jumped the gun and started without filming. But anyways, as you see, chunky X style leg pattern. Underneath this main beam is a 5-inch leg going straight up. It's not going anywhere. And if you can see here, I have it notched into that bottom brace. It just helps prevent twisting. Up through the top, again, 5-inch leg straight down, doweled so you can't see the screw head. In each one of these cross braces, you'll see that there is screw holes in each end, puttied. That is so that when we stain this thing, everything will be completely hidden. And as you can see, you have your reclaimed wood. It's not perfect, but when it's done, it will be perfect. So I have a 3-inch brace running across the bottom that's glued and screwed. That helps with stability between legs and also the top of the table. I don't know if you guys were noticing when we were underneath the table, there is plywood on the bottom. So how I make my tables is whatever size it is, I cut a piece of 1/2-inch plywood or 3/4-inch plywood sometimes down to size 2 inches less to decipher for the trim that I go around. So if it's an 8-foot table, I'll cut it 94, and this is a 42-inch table, so I cut my plywood to 40 inches. That way I can hit right onto my exact measurements. But I put the plywood down because plywood's generally flat and straight, and so I laminate each piece, glue on to that plywood, and it helps it just stay together better. And a lot of the times I'm pouring acrylic, and if you don't seal perfectly the seams, it'll sit there and drip down, and I hate when it gets all over the shop floor. But anyways, the plywood, that's just the way I do it. I'm sure there's people that do it differently. Actually, I know there's people that do it differently because I haven't seen a lot of people do the plywood method. I think it's a lot quicker, it's easier, it's faster. You have a reference with perfect edges to follow. So it just helps me. I guess that's the way I do things. So if you've never tried it, try it. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, well, let's still be friends, but just don't maybe use plywood anymore. I don't know. So here is the old pasture fence we are going to be building our chairs out of.
Another chair.
I am making chairs. How did you know? Huh? are you looking for? Huh? When I get to this point in my chairs that I'm putting the cross braces on, what I like to do is leave that set back just a little bit. It just makes it look a little bit more professional, even though the seat's going to be on there and you're not really going to see it. The back doesn't matter, but make sure that you're level with both sides of your cross sections there, and screw in the ends. But obviously I have to try to get in between that screw and right below it and still hit 2 into here, which is not really that hard if you just take your time. If you see there, I was just kind of using my bit as a reference to where I should set on the side of my leg there. And also, I'm using a trim head screw. It's got the reverse threads on it, which I really like. Sorry, I'm talking with another screw in my mouth, but it's got the reverse threads on it, so once you bury it, they don't pull out on you, which is really nice, and it gives a good tight fit. I like to test and make sure my seat height is where I put it at before I start doing the rest of them. That's about perfect. It's not too low and it's not too high. Elbows are just about at a 90. I don't know. I guess that's personally what I like best. I just feel it's more comfortable, and it's a happy medium between kind of adults and little kids too, so yeah, that's gonna work.
Dad, we're going to the park.
So what we are doing here is staining seat bottoms and chair backs. There's real no particular skill set in doing these except just rubbing on some stain. You don't want to leave it too thick, so you just kind of rub it in even till it's gone. I don't think I really need to tell you how to stain boards, but these are hard maple and it's allergy season, and these don't take stain. They don't really absorb stain too well like a softer wood would, like a pine. So you don't really have to be as particular as making it even. But anyways, we are going to be finishing up these chair bottoms, me and my assistant here. And I would like to get those on tonight, but we gotta go to the park.
Yeah.
So this will probably be our night. And the warden is making...
Now, we gotta eat dinner.
Oh, yeah, and the warden's making us go to the grocery store for groceries, because everybody loves grocery shopping. What I'm doing here is just wiping off any excess. With a clean, was a clean rag, but one that's not saturated and stained. Just kind of make sure that there's no streaks or extras. Because I have to poly this thing tonight, so I need it to dry, which it will. As you see, I'm putting the first coat of poly on this table. I use an oil-based poly for my tops, food safe of course, and I don't like a lot of sheen, so this particular polyurethane that I'm using is an ultra warm flat. I like the way it kind of keeps the wood looking natural once it dries. It doesn't give too much sheen, therefore you can't really see too many of the scratches that these tables acquire along their journey. But if it gets to a point where it's too bad, then you just sand it down and put another coat on. Not completely sand it down, just a nice little like 220 sanding, just to rough up the surface. Slap a new coat on and it looks brand spanking. Once you have one half fully covered, what I like to do is do full strokes with the grain all the way the length of the table without stopping until you get all the way across what you just did. Now you're probably thinking, well, hey, you're not going with the grain on the end pieces. Well, once I finish this, I'll come back and go with the grain here. You can do it however you want. That's just what I found gives me a good finish. And if you've never polyed before, I guess I would adapt this technique. Otherwise, Maybe if there's a better way that I don't know about, let me know. And we'll change. We'll get better. We'll get gooder. Way more gooder. Here I am putting my chair backs on my chairs. And how I do this is the most simple way that you can, and that's just holding it up and marking it. And the reason why I do that is because I can't measure these and cut them to one specific length because these are not exactly the same. One, because it's reclaimed wood. It's an old, not rotten, but weathered fence that has lost its trueness. So these columns are a little bit different. It might be 13 up here and 12 and 7/8 down here. So what I do is I mark it, then I can cut right on my line, and then I have a nice tight fit here. But you got to make sure that you mark the side, because if you forget what side it is, it's not going to fit right in there. And we'll see exactly what I'm talking about in a second. So you can see how our seam is nice and tight. It's even. That just makes it look a little bit better, even though we are working with reclaimed wood, so nothing is perfect. Nothing really has to be perfect. However, that's just going to be a stronger bond once we glue it, clamp it, and screw it. I hate changing new blades, but I like cutting with them. Sometimes these pop off. It's an old saw, but it's an awesome saw. So I put my cover on before I start it back up. That way if it pops off, I don't have to lose my cool and kick this thing over, because if that happens, I'm going to go throw it in the burn pile. So I like to prevent situations like that. Oh yeah, plug it in too. I always unplug it when I'm changing blades for obvious reasons. Remember, you can never have enough cowbell. Chairs generally taper from the back to the front. They get wider as they come out. So what we're going to do is take our letter L. We're going to line up flush to the back of the chair and then come to the very outside of the chair seat front. And I have these cut at 18 inches wide because generally chairs are 16 in the back and they taper out to about 18 in the front. You can do your chairs however you want to. Doesn't really matter, but I find that 16 to 18 is big enough for most butts. And even if your butt might be a little bit bigger than the next guy's or gal's, these will still work out just fine. And so now that we have those marked, we'll go back over to the radial arm saw and we'll line up these angles and they should be perfect. So earlier, when I was cutting these edges, you've seen that I was holding that up at a little bit of an angle. Well, if you can see here, I was doing that for a reason. Because when these set back in the chair, they follow that little angle there. And there's really no rhyme or reason for it as far as a specific angle. If you get it with any sort of angle, it closes that gap enough where it looks like a nice tight fit. So we got a little fine tuning and sanding, but for the most part, there you go. So now we'll get these fastened. We'll come up from underneath. You'll see in a second. Then we're going to sand and round off the edges. And then we're going to have to obviously restain where we sanded. So what we're doing here is we're going to set a screw from the back of the chair brace into the seat bottom that we just screwed onto the rest of the chair, because that's going to give us a whole bunch of extra strength for that one friend that we all have that likes to rock back in our chairs. And if you don't have that one friend, I hate to break it to you, but you probably are that friend. So don't forget to put your screw from the back of your chair into the seat portion that we just screwed down to the rest of the chair frame for extra support. So this is actually pretty rare, especially for me. However, it happens. So this piece is the piece I just marked and cut, and it fits in perfectly as it should because I marked it. But if I flip this baby around, it also fits perfectly on that side, which doesn't happen that often. So all I'm going to do is mark this piece onto my next piece, cut it, and put them in. So now that we know they fit nice and tight, we'll go ahead, glue, screw, and that chair is just about done. This is one of my favorite parts of building chairs is the doweling of the screw holes. I have a little dollop of wood glue on a piece of wood. Just dip that in, twist your dowel in, jam saw, cut them off flush, and then we'll come back through after we get them all filled and just lightly sand. I'll probably stain where all the dowels are just so that they're more hidden. But once you sand them down a little bit too, I mean, you can leave them if you want. I kind of like the looks of them, how they stick out like that. But I'm not being very careful with my saw, so I'm kind of making saw marks here, as you can see. So once I sand and stain that, it'll all just blend and kind of be hidden. But for the most part, this is basically what we're doing. If you're not strong enough to push the dowel in, you can cut this shorter and then use a hammer to tap it in. But I'm just kind of shoving it in by hand. I can make that work. So, like I said, if you can't push it in by hand, just make sure you cut it a little bit shorter so when you hit it with the hammer, you don't snap it, obviously. So, we will get to doing this then.
So I don't generally do my benches like this. What I typically do is get a 2-inch solid rough sawn timber and just kind of sand it down nice enough to sit on. But for this particular case, this is the first time I'm doing it this way. I just took 1x and ripped down a 2-inch, obviously trim piece to make it appear, look like it's solid thick 2-inch timber, or plank, I guess if you want to call it. But anyways, for my legs, I'm doing the Chunky X style legs. This is actually going to work better because I'm going to be able to essentially set in or give the appearance that the legs are set into this. But as far as bracing goes too, I'm going to be able to hide a little bit of it in the sense that it'll be up underneath the bench an inch. And I'm going to be able to use these trim pieces, as you'll see, for support and kind of boundaries for my X pattern too. So I think this is actually going to work out pretty good. Not even real sure how I'm going to do it. I have an idea, but I think it's going to work out pretty good. I'm better at just kind of winging it than I am trying to blueprint something up. So we're going to throw the legs on. Current progress on the bench. We are just working on our side supports. We have our middle brace glued and screwed, and we are working on our X pattern for side-to-side stability. I'm going to cut through quickly on this so that we can get this project buttoned up. But quickly, I want to show you kind of what I'm doing here is I have cut that angle so it sits up against the trim piece, bottom of the bench, and then obviously down into the column. Those are just tacked in there, they're glued right now, and then we'll come around the front, we'll toss in some screws to really strengthen it up.
Here at Not Normal, folks, all of our products, they're rigorously tested for your comfort and your surety. We test for strength, stability, and sturdiness. And this here piece of equipment, folks, has the Not Normal stamp of approval. You enjoy.